Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AI+HI project. I'm Alex Alonso, Chief Data and Insights Officer at SHRM. Thanks for joining us here today. Each week, we sit down with visionaries from the world of business, tech, and HR to provide you with the deep insights, actionable strategies, and practical advice for harnessing the transformative power and potential of artificial intelligence or AKA AI, as we all call it, combined with human ingenuity. Some of us refer to that as HI. This week, we're exploring the rise of AI-powered talent acquisition, its opportunities, its challenges, but more importantly, where it's headed next. Our guest this week is Adam Jackson, founder and CEO of Braintrust, and you have a variety of different products and things that you've put out there. I really appreciate the suite that you've put forth. Earlier this year, his company launched Braintrust Air, a fully autonomous job recruiting system powered by AI, something that was novel. I've not seen that in market. So this was actually something that really hit us in the world of tech and workplace tech in particular. Welcome to the AI+HI project, Adam.
Hey, Alex, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about what it is that you do. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of the Cliff's Notes on how awesome Adam is.
Well, I want to keep things truthful, so I don't know how if the awesome level is going to be up to expectations. But I'll tell you the short story. I'm a software engineer by training. I studied computer science at Vanderbilt University and moved out here to San Francisco right out of school. That was about 20 something years ago, and it kind of from kind of a mediocre programmer turned entrepreneur. I've been building and investing in two-sided internet-enabled marketplaces my entire career. The first one was an e-commerce shopping system acquired by Intuit. Second one was an automotive marketplace acquired by Advance Auto Parts. Third one is called Doctor on Demand. It's the country's largest video telemedicine service. I started that with Dr. Phil McGraw from TV. And now I'm on to Braintrust, which is started out life as a tech jobs marketplace connecting enterprise grade technical talent. So engineers, product managers, AI professionals, security professionals, designers with largely enterprise, Fortune 1000 companies like Nike, Nestle, Bank of America, Google, Volkswagen, for either contract or full time. And then we started, I've been a huge kind of student of AI my whole career. And a couple of years ago, I just started building AI tools internally to automate marketplace operations like screening, recruiting, then matching. And now with Air, we have kind of this, autonomous AI agent that will actually filter through resumes, figure out if people should get a first interview, and then actually conduct the first interview for you and do that with all the hundreds of applicants you get and hand the hiring manager back just the very most qualified ones for the human to take back over.
It's fascinating to see that. And one of the things that stands out, first and foremost, I actually want to go and scream out Anchorage Down, right? Over and over again, being a Vandy guy. This was a big week last weekend for you all.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
But one of the things that I kind of want to lay out there is, from your perspective, where is it that you're seeing the biggest opportunities that AI is really driving value when transforming hiring, recruiting, and onboarding? And I say that because you have a really unique vantage point, being both developer but also investor. And I'd love to kind of see, or just from your perspective, from your eyes, share that with our audience.
Yeah. So let me start with something I think most of the audience, if you're a TA professional or an HR professional, could relate to, is the value destruction that AI has caused so far. And then by that, I mean, there's these kind of resume job application spam tools, AI spam tools now that allow people to, well-meaning people. These are just folks who are looking to get their next job, right? It's not a nefarious thing in most cases, but, you can apply for 1,000 jobs in a day now with these AI tools. And, that's not great. If you're on the other end of that, looking at your ATS and saying, oh my goodness, we posted this job 2 days ago. We got 1,200 applicants. So I think AI has made life harder for some people with that tool. But flipping back to the TA side, AI is meant to fundamentally make kind of mundane, repetitive, quantitative tasks far easier. freeing, stuff that humans don't really like to do. And maybe if you do 40 phone screens in a row, the last five maybe aren't going to be as sharp as the first five. It's AI, I think, is that we're in the moment now where those sort of tasks can be automated, saving time, saving resources, and increasing the quality of the candidates coming through the other end.
It's fascinating because you talk specifically about candidate quality, right? I think of that, and especially job search quality, and how much efficiency that we can experience in that regard. I was reading some of, part of the background for this work is I was reading some of your writing and some of your interviews and thinking specifically about that notion of spam applying, right? And I think when I talk to TA professionals, that's the biggest thing that they struggle with is how do I separate the wheat from the chaff, right? The wheat from the chaff. And the tell me about a little bit of the nuts and bolts. How does that happen? What is the secret sauce in terms of kind of how that happens and how you make people more efficient in that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll describe how AIR works kind of end to end, and we'll hit on the big, pain points that we solve. So the workflow, with AIR is you start typing in what you need. It'll generate a job description for you. Maybe you already have one. Big deal. That part's easy, right? Then it posts the job to multiple job boards. AIR integrates directly with your ATS. So it's not, you don't have to change your workflow if you don't want to. Then the applicants start rolling in, right? This is the hard part. You get 5, 6, 700, 1,200 applicants. And what happens today is the poor TA manager is going to, kind of sort through, pick off, maybe the first 20 that look good. It's usually sorted by the time they came in, so first in, first out. And maybe you'll screen, 20, 30 folks, you find a couple reasonable ones and you move them along. What that means is the next 800 never got a look. And why didn't they get a look? It's because they applied, 6 or 8 or 12 hours after the first people did, mainly because these spam application tools. And so you're missing really qualified people here, and it's not the TA professional's fault. I mean, they've got this mountain of work to do. They're just trying to get their job done. They're trying to get the best person they can, but also produce, right? Also get through these racks. And so the game-changing moment here is AIR being able to analyze those resumes. And it doesn't matter the format. We've built some pretty sophisticated AI decoding tools that kind of vectorize a resume and pull the skills out and the experience and the criteria that matter to the employer, whether that is a college degree or not, whether it's language proficient or not, it doesn't matter. I mean, we work with nursing staffing firms and retail specialists, and tech is our core business, and legal, and it doesn't matter, right? We can ascertain the skills and then narrow that 1,200 pile down to 100 that look really promising. And then instead of today, you got to email the candidate, be like, hey, give me some times that work for you. And it's scheduling back and forth. And one of the shocking things we learned is something there's a 40-something% no-show rate in some industries for you go through all the brain damage of scheduling an interview and then it's a no-show. And so we eliminate all back and forth scheduling. You send the 100 qualified candidates a link. They open the link and they have a video call just like we're having with each other right now. This tech AIR is built on an LLM technology. So the LLM can ask really detailed questions. It's not just read a question, record the answer, read question 2, record the answer. And then a TA professional has to go look at tape. That doesn't save any time. So with this thing's actually understanding the responses and will ask follow-up questions in real time. So let's say you're interviewing for a UX design role and we need to make sure, say it's for Google, and we need to make sure you understand the React framework really well. AIR will ask the candidate 5 or 6 or 7 questions to ascertain that person's React knowledge, this framework React. And then during a conversation, AIR is filling out a scorecard, 1 to 5 on all the criteria that the hiring manager set. And so all those 100 discussions happen basically in parallel over a 24-hour period, no scheduling misses. And then 24 hours later, the hiring manager gets the best 10 or the best 12 or the best 15. And then he or she can go back and look at pieces of the interview, watch the whole interview. But in a 24-hour period, you've whittled 1,000 people down to 10. And we're very confident it's the 10 best people. So you're all those folks you were missing before, you're not missing now. And then the human takes back over, can talk to those 5 or 10 or whatever and make the decision.
Interesting. That's very interesting. You talk about some of the things that I wanted to ask about, namely this notion of kind of the things that AI is picking up on, and not just Braintrust Air, but every kind of tool out there is in some way, shape, or form measuring and assessing what we see from candidates, at least in the TA space, right? I'd love to get your thoughts on AI in general. What do you think it's going to do for things like soft skills and things like the interpersonal stuff that we've heard about for years, but is not as soft as we think, right? I have a colleague who talks a lot about this. His name is Roy Swift, and he says if soft skills were really soft, half the population wouldn't be divorced, right? So so he calls them the hard skills more than anything else. But
We need an AI couples counselor. I'm sure somebody's
I have no
building that.
doubt somebody's working on that. Yeah, no
Well,
doubt.
so look, so AI is such a broad field, as you know, right? So, I mean, one of the interesting tools, I'll answer this question in multiple parts. One of the interesting tools I actually just read about yesterday was Amazon built an internal culture AI agent. I don't know if you saw this, but what that does, I haven't used it. I don't work for Amazon, but I bet it's cool because they build good stuff over there. What that did, it was trained on all the internal documents about how to be successful at Amazon and what they're called. They're kind of known for a very fast paced kind of cutthroat culture and no desks to hide under kind of thing. So that as I read it, that AI is meant to sort of prepare people for that culture and coach them on how to be successful, and then maybe even ingest their performance reviews and give them some feedback there, right? So I think that's an incredibly compelling use of AI. On the soft skill piece, yeah, I think you're right. Like, some of what we call soft skills aren't really soft skills. Like, one I would point to that we do internally hiring here is like we're a 33 person startup, but we run a real lean ship and it's very fast paced. And someone who, you could get through a technical assessment, like, are you a great engineer or are you a great product manager? But, someone who would be a good fit here may not be happy at Bank of America or Goldman Sachs or Google or whatever, and vice versa, right? Someone who has a personality type that really wants kind of a larger team and more structure and a little less, I won't say chaos, but,
Sure.
maybe on the fly creativity requirements. Some people need that structure. Some people abhor that structure. So that to me is what you might call a soft skill. I think it's more of a hard skill. Air doesn't do this today, but it's on our roadmap. Air will be able to ascertain this. But then once you get further down, kind of the personality types, I think AI will have to hand it back to humans. And then, it's a slippery slope at that point into bias, right? Which is something that, we explicitly want to avoid on the AI side.
It's so funny you mentioned bias in particular, because a couple weeks ago I actually interviewed sort of an expert in the field of bias as it relates to hiring and screening, and what she's seeing in AI. She's a professor at NYU, and a columnist or a correspondent, I should say, for Vice. And one of the things that struck me was she was articulating she'd done a full blown ethnographic review of cases where you're creating unintended bias just by using AI and not knowing what goes into the algorithm. I guess my question for you and thinking about that is uh, sort of what other misconceptions do you see? What are the main misconceptions that you see when it comes to AI and how people are approaching it? I especially in this context, right? I see HR leaders immediately jump towards that, but towards the notion of bias and it's screening people out in a way that shouldn't be done. But I think there's a whole host of other misconceptions we never talk about, right? Like what goes into the algorithm? What is it that goes into the kind of things that actually make someone successful on the job? Those kinds of things. I'd love to hear what you think those misconceptions are.
This is such a fascinating and complex topic. So I'll try to take a bite here and a bite there. We see different misconceptions or biases about the bias of the AI from different types of hiring managers. So in tech specifically, we have a lot of tech clients. they assume this thing is not biased because it's a machine. It's built to it's built to understand someone's skill level and rank them in a purely objective way. And they would be right. A lot of non-tech hiring managers assume this thing is biased because humans are biased and this thing was built by humans, so it must be biased too. And I'm not saying both are possible, right? You can get an AI to do whatever the heck you want it to do. In our case, we from day one, our data science team and our product managers and myself specifically built AIR to not be biased. And what does that mean? It's ignore any age, location, ethnicity, even accents. Uh, all that stuff is just not factored in as an input to the scorecard. It's purely your ability to explain these skills, answer the questions in a way that, like, hey, sometimes it's a basic question like, hey, this hospital is, in the center of Louisville, Kentucky. Can you, what's your commute? And is that a reasonable commute? Right? It's a basic question, but that is a screening criteria, right? So it's meant to be completely objective that way. I'll say another, I don't know if this is a misconception or it's a question mark, and it's sometimes a blocker even when you're talking to a TA professional about potentially implementing AIR is, they're like, oh, they see the value prop right away. And then they're like, oh, what are applicants going to think about this? Like, if a person gets a link and they click on it and it's, this waveform kind of avatar that sounds like a human woman, but it's not, what are they going to think about that? And we had that same question. So, before we released AIR earlier this year, we tested it with hundreds and hundreds of folks from our talent marketplace. And we tested all kinds of different user interfaces. We tested one that looked like a human talking, and that was just too creepy, and it was so distracting and weird. So we made it this kind of pleasant waveform thing, and it's polite and respectful, and the overwhelming, like 95+% of the post interview feedback we're getting and continue to get from applicants is, one, first of all, I can't believe this thing works. Like, what kind of world are we living in? Like, it's amazing that this is possible. And then two, this is one that surprised us. Like, I felt more comfortable and relaxed than I would with a human. Like, I was able to take my time, and I wasn't feeling judged, or like I wasn't feeling pressure. And then the third one is, we actually will give feedback at the end, and we'll say, look, here's where you scored well. Here's where, you might need to brush up on skills here, and maybe here is the likelihood that, that you're going to advance to the next round. It's up to the client if they want that stuff shared. But that feedback piece was like, holy smokes, I've never gotten feedback after an interview before unless I got the job. Right. And so those are the kind of because this is all so new, those are the open questions, and I don't know, misconception or whatever, but that's kind of the reality that we're trying to demonstrate. We do in pilots with large enterprises, like, hey, this is actually a net positive experience for the applicant as well.
I love the example that you provide there in part because so I'm an IO psychologist by training. I'm an organizational psychologist by training. And one of the things that I think often gets overlooked is the experience and how much that leads to perceptions of bias versus not perceptions of bias, right? In thinking about some of those things that you described, like misconceptions, obviously my mind went straight to deepfakes when you talked about, the waveform and all those things. But, and boy, have I seen some examples of deepfakes that were scary good. Like, I couldn't believe it. Including one getting a phone call from Lloyd Austin one day that felt like why is the Secretary of Defense calling me, right? Put yourself in the shoes of a CHRO or a TA leader, someone who's a senior executive. What do you think they can do to kind of mitigate these things so that it doesn't result in that negative experience or result in missing out on some of those efficiencies you talked about earlier?
Yeah. So I would say if you're a CHRO, you're going to be tantalized by the sheer productivity gains of a technology like AIR or any other AI agent that's kind of doing the work for the team and then handing it back once a lot of the work's been completed. I would say, look, the way we kind of our approach is like, hey, don't take our word for it. Run a pilot, post a couple jobs that with your ATS that you're hiring for anyway, but with some of the jobs, send them through the AIR flow. And then with the other jobs, just do what you're doing, and then just run it for a month. Let the data make the decision, and see how you feel about it. Right? It should be something that raises morale, that frees up TEA professionals time to do things that are more important, like build the culture, increase job satisfaction, get people to, feel like they're progressing through their career instead of just 50 Zoom interviews a day.
You're almost referencing this thing that I once heard someone say, that was basically the focus from moving from what is your traditional kind of thinking about HR and the pieces that are nuts and bolts, to the other piece, which are incredibly valuable. They have to happen, right? That blocking and tackling. But there's also that other side, which is talent optimization. What do I do to optimize the talent I have, the talent I can have, those kinds of things. So it's fascinating. You're describing a paradigm that I think we still struggle with today, even within the profession and within most of the talent industry. So I appreciate you sharing that perspective. I'm going to go a little bit different and ask, because I suspect that even though you're working in the world of tech and you're providing tech solutions to a variety of organizations on a variety of different fronts, right? I know that this is not the only venture that you have. You have several other ventures. One of the things that I wanted to ask you is, what kind of practical guidance do you find yourself giving HR leaders when you do engage them? Because I'm assuming half of your engagements are also a little bit of just advisory services in some way, right? Tell me about that. What do you find yourself saying to them over and over again? What do you advise them to do?
Well, a couple different things. It's a great question. A couple different things. One is, look, I have so much empathy for any CHRO or person on their staff that's looking at this sea of solutions, and everyone's claiming to be able to do everything, and there's 1,000 startups, and then every big company's got an AI solution for you, and it's mind numbing. And so, but my advice is, avoid investing in these kind of co-pilot type things that make you 10% more effective, but you got to go through procurement. You got to do all the hard things about bringing a new vendor on. And it's the thing that sits on the Zoom while you're doing the interview and takes notes. It's like, this stuff is not good. It's brain damage. It's going to end up costing you more time and money than it saves. It's going to be ROI negative. Look for, so there's AI that makes you 10% faster. And then there's AI that does the boring and mundane and repetitive work for you. Concentrate on that second bucket. Is kind of my core piece of advice.
You know, it's so fascinating, because when we were talking and we were chatting in the green room, one of the things that stood out to me was I referenced something you said in one of your shows, and on the Adam Jackson show. And one of the things that stood out to me in particular was you referenced the notion of a wartime CEO. And obviously, I'm a big Godfather fan, so immediately I went straight to wartime consigliere. But one of the things that stood out to me was uh, a wartime CEO or a wartime consigliere knows you want to go for monumental impact, not measurable, tiny, incremental impact. And what you're describing there really feels like that. Is, if you're thinking about the solutions you might pursue, what it is that you might actually do to leverage the power of AI, I think that's a great piece of advice. In reality, is focus on the monumental. Where is it that the monumental lives? The incremental is actually not as incremental as you think, is my takeaway. You know, I'm going to ask you to put on your big hat now. This is Adam Jackson, the thought leader. I want to ask, where do you see the future? Right? If you were to look 10 years out, how are we in the world of HR? How are we leveraging AI, and especially LLMs? Right? You talk about Llama 2 and what how you built your platform on that. You obviously talk about all the other LLMs in your thinking and in your content production. I'd love to hear where you think we are and how we're leveraging LLMs 10 years out.
I'll give my answer, and I'm going to say it's 3 to 5 years out.
Okay.
10 years, God knows, right? But I want this to be, as you said at the top of the show, actionable, pragmatic. Like, what can what are things that we should be looking for now? And I believe in the 3 to 5 years, the CHRO function, or the HR function of a company, is going to look very different than it does today. You're going to have probably 2 to 3 times as many AI agents in your organization as you do human beings in your organization. I'm not saying you're necessarily going to have less human beings. I'm not arguing for a net job destruction scenario here. I actually don't think that's going to be the case, but there's going to be a lot of shifting of tasks, right? A job is a collection of tasks, and agents are good at doing discrete tasks. And so if you think about it, a CHRO is such an important role because human capital is the most valuable asset in any organization. And if we're going through this period of transition where AI agents are doing certain tasks that humans do today better and faster than humans, then you have to think about shifting what CHROs, how they think about resource management, right? So that means a couple things. One, here's the low hanging fruit, I would say. I did this at our own company is I did in our annual employee survey kind of 360 thing. I asked the question, what's a critical part of your job that you don't enjoy doing? And we got all kinds of interesting responses. And then I took those responses, and it turns out I was able to automate about half of them. And so we built agents or other just automation more broadly to take those unpleasant tasks off those folks' plates. And then that freed them up to do stuff that AI agents can't do and stuff that they enjoy doing more, whether it's in a sales group or a product management group or an engineering group. It applies everywhere. Ops, there's no department this will not affect. And so if I'm a CHRO at a Fortune 1000, that's the first thing I would do is like, look, you're going to manage all of the, and then the second thing would be like the interaction between agents and humans, right? Remember, like, let's forget the dystopian kind of crazy, these are going to kill us all or whatever. I don't buy that. Yeah. These things exist to make us more productive. They exist to make our jobs better, and happier, right? Higher satisfaction, right? That is going to be in 5 years. CHROs are going to be managing fleets of agents and making sure that those agents are doing what they're supposed to be doing, and more importantly, making sure their human capital aren't wasting time on frustrating, repetitive, mundane things that agents should be doing.
Adam, I appreciate that perspective. Lord knows the number one question I get over and over again is, when is Skynet going to actually take over, right? The old Terminator technology. I'm
never.
I've yet to meet anyone, even the most bullish on the power of AI becoming artificial superintelligence. I have yet to meet anybody who's bullish on it happening anytime within, the next century or so.
I'll finish with one of my favorite quotes from one of my heroes, Mark Andreessen here in Silicon Valley. He said, what's the best way to beat a super intelligence computer at chess? Unplug
it. I knew you were going to go. You're going to go there. Well, Adam, I really appreciate that. I guess there's a part of me that say I wish we could keep going for another hour, honestly, because I think that this is valuable. One thing that stands out to me, though, is if you could give me just one final thought on what it is that you think just senior leaders across the world of business should be looking to next, right? I know you do a lot of trends, kind of predicting what's going to happen in 2024. I love that episode on your show. What do you think? One trend that we're not seeing that might come up in 2025?
Well, I'm not sure if we're not seeing it or not, but I'll say what we've been talking about, operational efficiency, AI is taking over tasks that people don't want to do, so increasing EBITDA margins through AI agents. I think that's the 24 story, but it's going to take years to deploy through the American enterprise. The second part, I'm not saying this hasn't been talked about, but like LLMs as creative thought partners, right? So human ingenuity still wins. It will always win, in my opinion. It's still the crux of what makes society great. It's the crux of art and business and everything that makes our society, the parts we love about it, is human ingenuity. But I encourage all of our employees at Braintrust, use the LLMs as thought partners to talk about, here's the problem I'm trying to solve creatively. Pretend you're Mark Zuckerberg. How would you solve this, right? It could be mundane things. It could be big things, but these LLMs are great brainstorming partners that can help. It's probably not going to come up with the right answer for you, but it'll push you mentally into further down the path of you coming up with the right answer. So to me, they're not replacements for human ingenuity. They're inputs.
That's actually the core crux of delivering ROI by leveraging AI and HI, right? So we're grateful to have had you on the show. That's going to do it for us this week on this episode. A big thank you to you, Adam, and for sharing your experiences as well as the deep insights. I know our audience appreciates it. Before I say goodbye, and before we all say goodbye, I encourage you to follow the AI+HI project wherever you enjoy your podcasts. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to comment, leave a review, etc. Whatever you want to do, put a smiley face on it. Finally, if you can find all our episodes, or if you want to find all our episodes on our website, please go to shrm.org/AI+HI. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the conversation, Adam. We look forward to seeing you all the next time.